You know what I've noticed a lot when people talk about veganism? They see it as just a diet. But the truth is, it's far from it. See, humans are pretty much naturally carnivore, leaning omnivores. But the real reason most vegans choose veganism, it is not likely that they choose it as a dietary option. Do you know what feels odd to me? It's odd to look at a person who lacks a complete philosophical edge. They use their intellect to live more accordingly to nature. I'm looking at you, Luke Smaxers. Sorry. Which, of course, it's not all out of the ordinary to see a biological being follow their biology. But often enough, there seems to be a bit lack of self-awareness, let's just say, about how we are on this floating rock amongst unimaginable amounts of other floating rocks, just kind of existing without further explanation. So when I see these people, I just couldn't imagine what is going on inside their head. I just can't get into their mental state. I'm like Lunge trying to get into the head of Tenma, but these people are Johan, basically. Anyway, I've talked about antinatalism on this channel on a couple of occasions, trying to give my stance on it, but I struggled trying to provide my ideology, considering not only that I was trying to beat a Minecraft parkour course, but also that I didn't really have a structured script that I could try and argue with. Let me summarize what I've tried to capture, okay? Existential suffering is non-consensual undergoing of experience. So anything that we never chose to participate in is existential suffering. There doesn't need to be harm involved in order for it to be that. Now, considering life is an experience we never gave consent to, that would propose that life in itself is suffering, or at least existential suffering. So while existential suffering doesn't show up as some negative feeling within you, it exists pretty much in every of our life experience. Now, antinatalism proposes the question whether if we have a say on causing someone else existential suffering. A question of compassion towards the non-existent. Think of this hypothetical individual, okay? They get to be whatever they want to be without being constantly driven by factors they never chose. Now, would it be justified to pull them out of that just so you get to experience feelings of joy? Because remember, even the feeling of joy is a form of existential suffering. Anyhow, that's antinatalism for me. Now, existential suffering, it isn't exclusive for people. And this is where veganism comes to play, okay? Even animals experience existential suffering. Animals as well are bred into the world without consent. Okay, now if anybody starts asking about an animal giving consent isn't really used literally here, but more as a conceptual term. So an argument about an animal not being able to give consent would not apply, considering the same could be asked about people. But yeah, every once existing being, including animals, has one being that hypothetical individual, that one that gets to be what they want to be, okay? But let me give you an unpopular idea. Humans can make sense of suffering, heck, even find existential meaning within it. Even if badly, even if falsely, we can wrap it in meaning, narrative, sacrifice, duty, love, God, future, being remembered, etc. But you see, most animals can't do that. They experience pain, fear, stress, loss, but without any kind of philosophical framework that makes sense of it. Their suffering is purely raw, with no hope for an escape. Think about it. It's not animals matter less, more like they are more trapped inside the suffering. An animal in a factory farm doesn't think that their suffering is temporary, has meaning, that it leads somewhere. No, it's just pain, fear, instinct, and finally death. And you see, the fact that their life is mostly instinctual doesn't reduce their suffering at all, because we may not realize it. Pain doesn't need philosophy to cause suffering. So if someone wants to argue animals don't have the same values because they're not rational or stuff like that, you're missing the whole point. The lack of rationalization doesn't weaken the moral problem. In fact, it arguably intensifies it. So, as the argument gets pushed far enough, a lot of people don't respond with ethics at all. They respond with speciesist authority. It's okay because God says so. Humans have domination and animals were put here for us. Stuff like that. And I want to be very clear. This is not a moral justification. It just really isn't. Because it only works if you already accept that authority. It doesn't answer the suffering itself. Now, I'm not saying animals suffer more than humans. I'm saying they suffer without meaning. And once you notice that, it becomes harder to pretend this is just about the healthiest diet. So let me ask you this. Does suffering matter less when the one experiencing it can never understand it?